As we continue to dig deeper into religion and the lies that we have been grown up into, it's important that we all re-educate ourselves and learn subjects that this system seems to want us to be ignorant of and only understand from their perspective. Last week, I spoke about the religion of Christianity, and I praised Yah that the response I got was not what I expected. There were many that understood what was being communicated, and more than anything, people commented that they were being led to self-reflect in their faith, which is really the overall goal, just for you to go back and read the scriptures on your own. People must go back and review things and make sure that they are serving our Father in truth and not just from tradition or pride. And I'm overly blessed to know that there are many that are beginning to reflect and review their faith and search out our Father deeper than how it was once promoted to them. But there was some pushback that I expected because that label of the faith of Christianity has been guarded and protected for centuries. I did not expect everyone to understand. Over the past month or two, I also have been making content about the end times and speaking about the Antichrist and the Beast of Revelations. There has been many people that have disagreed with my conclusions, and I truly do understand why. There were people that were offended by my claim of lazy research with the people that only identify Rome as the source of all the problems coming in the end times, believing that Rome is the beast, Rome is the Antichrist, Rome is this and that, everything. It's this belief that has been passed down ever since the Protestant Reformation with Martin Luther, that the Roman Catholic Church is the beast of Revelation and that the Pope is the Antichrist. And no, I am not a fan of Rome and their church, and I do absolutely believe that they play a large role in the end times. But I believe that there is a lot of information that people are leaving out when they made this conclusion. From the writings of Martin Luther to the writings of Ellen White and the Great Controversy, people that follow these ministries and these influences have followed conclusions that have left a great deal of information out about this world and how it truly operates. As we continue to discuss false religion and the end times, we need to dig deeper into subjects that most people aren't placing into their equations when really understanding this world. This right here is a Masonic checkerboard. I've discussed it in my symbols video when discussing duality, but this needs to be understood in greater detail. Here's the thing. As we continue to wake up to this world and the agendas that we are all being led through, it's important to understand our enemy and his agents. If you can see Rome and you can easily see their influence, that's a great thing. But if this is all you see, it leaves you vulnerable to the other side of the checkerboard. This subject will be something that we will be leading into because you cannot start at the conclusion of the matter and understand it. There will be confusion. But I will raise the main part and argument now, and as you follow the information, it can help you see where we have been going. In this satanic agenda that is leading to a new world that the Beast of Revelation will take power in, it is important to understand the schemes that Satan has been moving his control through, and the Masonic checkerboard in the yin-yang symbol of duality displays it. There is both white magic and black magic that have been waged against the world, and they have been warring against each other throughout our history. You see, this is why there are secret societies. These secret societies were not just secret because they didn't want the ordinary people of this world to know what they were doing, but they were secret because they were warring against the church. The power of Rome is white magic, and the black magic has been waged through the agents of Freemasonry, another powerful religion in this world. The problem most people have is that while they can see Rome, they don't truly understand the other side and the role that they have in this modern world. In order to truly understand these agendas and not fall for them, knowledge is truly power. These things have been done in the dark, yes, but they are now finally being exposed in the light. So I want to educate you on subjects that are not taught in schools or in churches. And the funny thing is that the reason why many of these things aren't taught, especially in the churches, is because many of the pastors are associated with that other power. If you want to understand this world and its agendas, knowledge will give you more power and understanding when reviewing this world. So we need to go through some history in order that people can truly understand some subjects that have been right in their face, but not really truly taught. We need to go back in time in order to understand the present. In our present world, we are about to enter into a new period in time where Bible prophecy is about to be fulfilled. And these agendas that are a part of it did not happen overnight. And it did not happen just because of Rome. If you're going to understand the full agendas, while understanding why some of these leaders you may trust from history like Martin Luther or Ellen White should not be given just blanket trust, you need to have more historical understanding. We need to speak about the Protestant Reformation and then the English Reformation. But these are events that happened during the period of the Renaissance, which is a subject on its own. These three subjects right here are subjects that are major topics that have led us into our modern world that we are currently in right now. But with all of our education and all of these schools, all these degrees, all these universities, all these college students are everywhere, you must ask yourself, why is it that such a small percentage of people in this world truly have a grasp on this history? Why has there been such a small amount of focus on such important times in our history? It's because we are not supposed to know these things, because the knowledge of this is power. If we are to be the remnant that will come into our Father's kingdom, we must be girded up in spiritual strength, and we must walk in knowledge and wisdom. It's easy to fall for Satan's traps when we don't recognize that those traps are his. So we need to gain some knowledge of history. Before we go into the period of the Renaissance, we need to understand the other side to the Masonic checkerboard. In the Hijacker series, I started with the Roman Catholic Church, and that information is important to understand the foundation of where religion started in this world, and when the Bible was hijacked. But in order to bring about the Satanic Kingdom, the agenda is being carried out by both sides of the Masonic board, black and white magic. Like I said, the Roman Catholic Church is the white magic. Freemasonry is the black magic. In order to understand how we got to the point that we are at right now, where they both began to work together in the late 20th century, actually like in the 1980s, we need to stop only focusing on the white magic on the white side of that board, and we need to know and understand some things about the other side of the board. So before we go to the Renaissance, we need to go back to the Middle Ages and discuss the beginnings of Freemasonry. We need to go back to the Knights Templar and understand where the split from Rome occurred. So this is where we're going to go. Let's begin. Okay, so this topic was covered maybe 3 years ago or more in my History of Religion series. I've covered so much since then that I think that this important subject has been overlooked and not really studied, so it must be brought back up again. When I try to teach on subjects, I do it in layers. You cannot speak about these important subjects all in one video. So when I discuss a certain subject, I often believe that I'm just adding on to a layer that I already taught to. But I recognize that being that it's over 3 years ago, maybe some of this information is just lost on people. So many people just don't truly understand what it is I'm saying. So these things need to be re-examined. Like I said earlier, it is hard to understand this matrix that we live in by just understanding the present day or even the last 100 to 150 years. In order to have a solid grasp on all these conspiracies and understand the plans and devices of the wicked, we have to go further back in history. These plans to establish Satan as the God worshipped by all, for him to try to realize his goal of being like the Most High, they did not just come about in the last couple of centuries. This new world agenda has been orchestrated in secret over many centuries through many groups, organizations, monarchs, and families. We are just at the climax of all their plots and their schemes. You cannot have a solid grasp on these plots and schemes without going back in history to the many holders of these secrets and plots. And so after understanding Rome and Catholicism, the next good place to start is with the Knights Templar. Have you heard of them? Maybe or maybe not. But much of the wicked influence of today can be traced right back to the Templars and the groups surrounding and intertwined with them. But many of us do not know much about them. It's really hard to break this group down in one video, but I do not want to devote 2 videos to them, so I will be condensing a lot of information. I have a lot of books on this subject, but for this video, I will be using a lot of information from the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail. They've done a massive amount of research and compiled it together, but the researchers are not on Yahusha's side. It's important that you recognize that if you ever read this book. This is a book to be read only if you have a solid foundation in the truth, because this book is totally about the other side. This book is about the coming Antichrist side and his lie, and the Templars are a part of that foundation of the story. Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code pulls a lot from this book. Anyone that attempts to say that they know who the Antichrist is, but does not use any of this information from their book in their analysis, may often be very wrong. You always have to remember that the wicked have a side too. They have things that they believe in. So you just can't look at evil in the world and just say, oh, this person looks more evil than this person. I believe they will fit this role. You have to understand that these people have beliefs just as we have beliefs from the scriptures. They all have beliefs. So you just can't discount it and act like it doesn't matter. So if you're analyzing this world and you're looking at how evil people are and you're saying, oh, the Pope or Barack is the Antichrist, and you're not using a lot of this information to understand what they believe, you are leaving out a lot of information in your conclusion. But I digress. The Templars are a subject that should be understood because they are a major part of history. It all goes back to when Islam begins gaining dominance in the Middle East. The Arab followers of the new religion of Islam declared a jihad, which is a holy Islamic war, against the Byzantine Empire. Just for some background, in the year 395, the Roman Empire was formally divided into a Western Empire ruled from Rome and an Eastern Empire ruled from Constantinople. This Eastern Empire will be known by historians as the Byzantine Empire. In the year 622, Muhammad began to unite the Arab tribes into a powerful fighting force through his preaching of Islam. His most important act during his early years in Medina was to pass down a revelation, giving permission to his followers to go to war against those identified as their enemies. According to Muslim scholars, this concept of jihad, or holy war, can legitimately be applied against injustice and oppression, or against the rejectors of what they feel is the truth of Islam. And this is why when we review the history of the true Yahudim that were in his area that he persecuted, this is why. Because they did not submit to his doctrine and his way. This is why they scattered away from the Middle East there. By the time of Muhammad's death in 632, he had unified the Arabs under the banner of Islam, a religion, as well as a social, legal, and political institution. And they now had a justification in the name of their God for war and conquest. So like I was saying, the Muslims declared a jihad against the Byzantine Empire. In 636 AD, the army of Umar invaded Palestine, and by the summer of the following year, the army was encamped outside the walls of Jerusalem. In February of 638, after a 7-month siege, the Christians were forced to surrender to Caliph Umar, the Muslim commander. Umar then goes to the Temple Mount called the Haram al-Sharif by the Muslims, the noble sanctuary, where his purpose was to search for relics, among them what he called the mihrab or prayer niche of David, which Umar heard the Prophet Muhammad speak of. It's important if you really want to understand history to understand the history between Muhammad, Islam, and the true Yahudim in that land. In the Understanding Israel series, part 4, I speak about this in great detail. So like I said, Umar goes to the Temple Mount called the Haram al-Sharif by the Muslims, where the purpose was to search for relics, which one of them was the prayer niche of David, which Umar heard the Prophet Muhammad speak of. Umar also had a temporary mosque built at the southern end of the mount, on the spot where the Al-Aqsa Mosque stands today. They started building the Al-Aqsa Mosque 60 years later. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third most holy site in Islam. It should not be confused with the Dome of the Rock that is also in Jerusalem, which is the most famous Islamic site in Jerusalem. It is not a mosque, but a holy shrine for Muslims. Muslims believe the Dome of the Rock is to be where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven on his night journey. It was completed around the year 691. So right now we're just going over the rise of Islam. It's important to understand this if you're going to understand how the Templars came to be. Let's keep going. Following the Arab conquest of Jerusalem in 638 AD, the city's largely Christian history enjoyed a long period of good relations with the Muslims. Now, listen, it's important to understand while Protestants today try to disassociate themselves with the Roman Church, this is how history has been told by generalizing Roman Catholicism with Christianity. Before the Reformation, all these people under Rome were called Christians. This is how history tells it. History has been told by generalizing Roman Catholicism with Christianity because before the Reformation, the Catholic Church is what defined Christianity in the world. It's important to understand this. Anyways, the Christian population enjoyed a long period of good relations with the Muslims, but by the 10th century, the Muslims had become more aggressive. Starting in the year 1004, the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim, who ruled over Egypt, North Africa, Palestine, and southern Syria, launched a campaign of anti-Christian fanaticism. By 1014, over 30,000 churches had been destroyed and many Christians were forced to convert to Islam. But the critical turning point in Western attitudes towards the Muslims came in the year 1009. This is when Al-Hakim ordered for the complete destruction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. After Al-Hakim died, his successor allowed the Byzantine Empire to rebuild the church. After this, Christians again started to make trips to Jerusalem. But the rise of the Muslims was too much for the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I think it should be noted that it is said that Islam was created by Rome as a tool to bring about more rule and division in this part of the world, and to create another monotheistic faith. But you don't hear me teach this not because I don't think that it's true, but only because I don't have any source I can document to prove it, and this is why you haven't heard me make this conclusion. I just want to make that clear. So, where are we going with this? This is how we got to the Templars. We're going to keep going. In the year 1095, Pope Urban convened the Council of Clermont in central France. He told his listeners that the Muslims were advancing into the heart of Christian lands, mistreating the population and desecrating their shrines and churches. He told them that the Emperor of the Byzantine Empire had called for help, and it was the duty of the West to respond. He emphasized the special holiness of Jerusalem and told how pilgrims had suffered on their journeys there. He then made a great appeal to let the West go and rescue the East. He said that the nobility should stop fighting one another and instead fight a righteous war, and on top of that he said that those who died in battle there would have remission of sins. Rome placed themselves as authority and condoned the war, and then forgave the soldiers for the war they contributed in if they died. Never having that actual authority, but this is what they do. Anyways, this was the start of the First Crusade. The Crusades, a subject that we've all heard about, but a subject that's not taught much in our school history class. In the year 1099, the Crusaders, which consisted of about 1,200 knights, not the Knights Templar, they did not yet exist in this crusade. Remember, there were about 8 crusades, 2 major ones. The Templars fought in the second one. But yeah, 1,200 knights and 15,000 men took back Jerusalem. And after this condensed history, this is where we begin to meet the Knights Templar. The formation of the Templars is said to start from the insecurity on the roads, where there was murder, rape, enslavement, and robbery of unarmed pilgrims to Jerusalem. A group of 9 French knights had proposed to the Patriarch of Jerusalem at the time, and King Baldwin II, that for the salvation of their souls, they would form a community or withdraw to a life in a monastery. But Baldwin persuaded them to save their souls by protecting pilgrims on the road, and they should take a vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. On Christmas Day of the year 1118, those 9 knights took their vows before the Patriarch in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, calling themselves in Latin the Pauperes Comitaton Christi, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. Their declared objective was, as far as their strength permitted, they should keep the roads and highways safe, with a special regard for the protection of pilgrims. The king gave the Al-Aqsa Mosque to the poor fellow soldiers, and they made it their headquarters. But here's the controversy that's stated. First off, there's no record of them actually defending the pilgrims on the road, and King Baldwin did have a royal historian under his command named Fulk de Chartres, but there is no record of the Templars' early activities in his 50 years of writing. In fact, there is only one writer about the beginning of the Templars, and that's Guillaume of Tyre. He wrote about them sometime in 1175 and 1185. So he was not a first-hand witness of their beginnings, but he is the only source we can gain information about their beginnings from. He writes that in their first 9 years, they did not allow new membership. It was just the 9 of them. And it of course becomes suspicious when you try to understand how only 9 knights could protect all the roads for the traveling pilgrims and not recruit members to assist them. When you review this history, this beginning history makes no sense, and not much is known really. The rumor is that during those 9 years, they found something under Solomon's temple. Many people claim it was the Ark of the Covenant, but no one knows for sure. Whatever it was said to give them enormous power, only second to the Pope, and they were known as Templars because of them working at Solomon's temple. Within a decade from their beginning, the Templars' fame seemed to have spread back to Europe. By 1128, a tract praising their virtues and qualities was issued by Saint Bernard. Saint Bernard, at the time, was the chief spokesman of the Christian world. He said, in praise of the new knighthood, he declares the Templars to be the epitome and apotheosis of Christian values. By the year 1127, most of the 9 knights returned to Europe from Jerusalem. In January 1128, a church council was convened at Troyes. At this council, the Templars were officially recognized and incorporated as a religious military order. Hugues de Payen was given the title of Grand Master. He and his subordinates were to be warrior monks, soldier mystics, a militia of Christ. The Templars were sworn to poverty, chastity, and obedience. They were obliged to cut their hair, but forbidden to cut their beards, and that distinguished themselves during a time when most men were clean-shaven. All members of the order were required to wear white habits of surcoats and cloaks, and these soon evolved into distinctive white clothing for which the Templars became famous. Their behavior on the battlefield was strictly controlled too. For example, if one were captured, Templars were not allowed to ask for mercy or to ransom themselves. They were compelled to fight to the death. They were not permitted to retreat from a battle unless the odds against them exceeded 3-1. In the year 1139, a papal bull was issued by Pope Innocent II. According to this bull, the Templars owed allegiance to no secular or ecclesiastical power other than the Pope himself. In other words, they were made totally independent of all kings, princes, and of all interference from both political and religious authorities. They had become a law unto themselves, an autonomous international empire, only to answer to the Pope. Now, this was a great deal of power that they were given during this period in time in the world. Immense power only second to the Pope. It's important that you understand that part. And as their fame grew, they then began to recruit. Throughout Europe, younger sons of noble families flocked to enroll in the order's ranks, and vast donations in money, goods, and lands were made from every quarter of the Christian world. Hugues de Payen, the first Grand Master of the Templars, donated his own properties, and all new recruits were obliged to do likewise. On admission to the order, a man was compelled to sign over all his possessions. Within a mere 12 months of the Council of Troyes, the Knights Templar Order held substantial estates in France, England, Scotland, Flanders, Spain, and Portugal. Within another decade, it also held territory in Italy, Austria, Germany, Hungary, the Holy Land, and points east. Although individual knights were bound to their vow of poverty, this did not prevent the order from amassing great wealth at an unprecedented scale. All gifts were welcomed. At the same time, the order was forbidden to dispose of anything, not even to ransom its leaders. The Templars received in abundance, but as a matter of strict policy, it never gave. During the next 100 years, the Templars became a power with international influence. They were constantly engaged in high-level diplomacy among nobles and monarchs throughout the Western world and the Holy Land. Close links with them were also forged within the Muslim world, like with the groups the Assassins, their Muslim counterpart said to be actually started by the Templars. It's important to note that the Templars' interests extended beyond war and diplomacy and political intrigue. They actually created and established the institution of modern banking that we know today. They created our modern banking of today. By lending vast sums to destitute monarchs, they became the bankers for every throne in Europe, and for certain Muslim potentates as well. With their network of common house of the Templars throughout Europe and the Middle East, they also organized, at modest interest rates, the safe and efficient transfer of money for merchant traders, a class that became increasingly dependent upon them. Money deposited into one city, for example, could be claimed and withdrawn in another by means of a promissory note inscribed in intricate codes. The Templars thus became the primary money changers of this age, and the Paris common houses of the Templars became the center of European finance. This is the history I hope you're following. They enjoyed a strong monopoly on the best and most advanced technology of their age, the best that could be produced by armorers, leatherworkers, stonemasons, military architects, and engineers. They contributed to the development of surveying, map-making, road building, and navigation. They possessed their own seaports, shipyards, and fleets, a fleet both commercial and military, which was among the first to use the magnetic compass. So needless to say, they amassed a great deal of power and influence. And so, after their powerful rise, their fall was to soon come after. By the year 1306, King Philippe IV of France was anxious to rid his territory of the Templars. They were much stronger and better organized than he could ever be. They were firmly established throughout France, and by this time, even their allegiance to the Pope was only nominal. Philippe had no control over the order, and he also owed them money. Philippe first had to enlist the cooperation of the Pope, who the Templars owed allegiance and obedience to. Between 1303 and 1305, the French king and his ministers engineered the kidnapping and death of one Pope, Pope Boniface VIII, and quite possibly the murder by the poison of another, Pope Benedict XI. Then, in 1305, Philippe managed to secure the election of his own candidate, the Archbishop of Bordeaux, to the vacant papal throne. The new pontiff took the name Pope Clement V. Indebted as he was to Philip's influence, he could hardly refuse the king's demands, and these demands included the eventual suppression of the Knights Templar. Philip planned his moves carefully. A list of charges was compiled, partly from the king's spies who had infiltrated the order, and partly from the voluntary confession of an alleged renegade Templar. He compiled these charges and issued sealed and secret orders to his stewards throughout the country. These orders were to be opened everywhere simultaneously and implemented at once. At dawn on Friday, October 13th, 1307, all Templars in France were to be seized and placed under arrest by the king's men, their common houses placed under royal sequestration, their goods confiscated. And this time is where we get the famous Friday the 13th from. Whether the Templars were warned in advance or whether they deduced what was in the wind, certain precautions were definitely taken. It's said that the knights who were captured seemed to have submitted passively, as if under instructions to do so. There is persuasive evidence of some sort of organized flight by a particular group of knights, virtually all of whom were in some way connected with the order's treasurer. It's not surprising that the treasury of the temple, together with almost all its documents and records, disappeared as well. Basically, when Friday the 13th happened, when they were all supposed to be captured and burned and killed, the true power of the Templars were able to flee, and they took their most prized possessions and their wealth, and they fled France. Now, I do hope that all that history didn't bore you, but it's important to understand the history so you understand who these people were and how they came in power and how they were later detached from Rome. All that history leads us here. This is where it begins to get really interesting. It begins to tie into our modern world. The Templars were said to be devil worshippers. They worshipped an idol called Baphomet. At their secret ceremonies, they supposedly prostrated themselves before a bearded male head, which spoke to them and invested them with occult powers. Unauthorized witnesses of these ceremonies were never seen again, and there were other charges as well, which were even more vague. Accusations of infanticide, killing a child within a year of birth, or teaching women how to abort. Also of obscene kisses at the induction of their new candidates, and also accusations of homosexuality. The biggest accusation was that these Christian knights ritually denied Messiah, and they trampled and spit on the cross. In the year 1312, the Templars were said to be officially dissolved. In March 1314, Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master, was burned to death over a slow fire. With his execution along with others, the Templars apparently vanished from the stage of history. But as I alluded to earlier, that order did not destroy the Templars completely, given the number of knights who escaped, who remained at large, or also who were acquitted. The papal bulls that King Philippe sent dissolving the order was never proclaimed in Scotland, and therefore the order was never technically dissolved in Scotland. Many English and French Templars found a Scottish refuge. This is important to know. In Portugal, the order was declared by an inquiry and simply modified its name, becoming the Knights of Christ. Ships of the Knights of Christ sailed under the familiar red pete cross, and it was under the same cross that Christopher Columbus's 3 caravels crossed the Atlantic to the New World. This cross right here. Columbus himself was married to the daughter of a former Knight of Christ and had access to his father-in-law's charts and diaries. The Templars were presented in history as Christian soldiers who fought for the glory of Christ, but there was a dark side to them that was done in secret. They were sorcerers and magicians and alchemists. Many of the people that lived during their time shunned them, believing them to be in league with unclean powers. They were the beginning of the known black magic-based organizations that were brought to light. They were also known to be guardians of the Holy Grail, which is very important to know but we won't go in depth about the Holy Grail in this video. When speaking about the Holy Grail and the Templars, this all goes back to the subject of the Antichrist, but we're not going there at this point in time. So with all this history, what is the significance of the Templars? Where are we going with all this? They obviously are not a religion, so why am I speaking about them right now? You see, the Templars are the beginning to what we know as secret societies. Now, I'm not saying that the secret societies did not exist before the Templars, because that's not true. We have the Cathars, the Priory of Sion, the Jesuits, and others. But the Templars are the most known, and they are the foundation of the many secret societies that came about after the Templars were said to be dissolved. Do you remember how I said that they were never dissolved in Scotland? Where do you think Scottish Rite Freemasonry comes from? You see, many Freemasons appropriate the Templars as their predecessors. Certain Masonic rites or observances claim direct lineal descent from the Knights Templar order, as well as authorized custody of its arcane secrets. Certain Masonic lodges have adopted the grade of Templar, as well as rituals and appellations supposedly descended from the original order of the Templars. What I'm saying is that the global banking dynasties, the elite families of the ages, all take upon certain characteristics of the Templars, and it is said that the wealth and secret of the Templars were passed down over to these elites. Their power, their secrets, their wealth, all were passed down from this group. It's no coincidence that our current global banking system was modeled after theirs. The Templars were the practitioners of black magic that became the foundation of many secret societies today, and we cannot understand the plots and schemes of the devil without understanding the groups and orders that he established among the ages. We of course know we will never know all of the secrets, but we can have an understanding so that we are not overtaken by their lies. The Templars are the foundation of how the religion of Freemasonry came into the world. Let me show you. According to Albert Mackey's Masonic Encyclopedia, when mentioning the Templars, Mackey writes a great deal about them. Here's some of it. It was only in Scotland that the Templars endured no persecution. Long after the dissolution of the order in every other country in Europe, the Scottish preceptories continued to exist and the knights lived undisturbed. One portion of the Scottish Templars entered the army of Robert Bruce, and after the Battle of Bannockburn were merged in the Royal Order of Scotland and then established by him. Another portion of the Scottish Templars united with the Knights Hospitallers of St. John. They lived amicably in the same houses and continued to do so until the Reformation. At this time, many of them embraced Protestantism. And I want you to hold that point in your mind until we reach the English Reformation, please. Also, in reference to the Templars' land, Mackey writes, "The Order of Knights Templar was dissolved in England by an Act of Parliament in the 17th year of the reign of Edward II, and their possessions transferred to the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, or Knights Hospitaller. Subsequently, in the 32nd year of the reign of Henry VII, their possessions were transferred to the king. One of the privileges possessed by the English Templars was that their lands should be free of tithes, and these privileges still adhere to these lands, so that a farm, being what is termed Templar land, is still exempt from the imposition of tithes, if it is occupied by the owner, an exemption which ceases when the farm is worked under a lease." You see, what I'm bringing out into the light is the connection of Freemasonry with England. There are a lot more dots to connect, so I'm not going to rush through this. But through these brief explanations, you can see that Freemasonry was blended into English society, and they blended into the Church of England, which is why we begin to see this title, Reverend. In Mackey's dictionary, in reference to the word Reverend, he gives this simple explanation. Reverend, a title sometimes given to the chaplain of a Masonic body.
What did he say?
Reverend, a title sometimes given to the chaplain of a Masonic body. I've tried to explain this in many other videos when speaking about the word reverend, because in the Masonic terms, they use terms of worship. And so reverend means to be revered. And so this title, which we use to Christian ministers, actually is a Masonic term, as is defined in Mackey's Masonic Encyclopedia. But again, I don't want to rush this. What I'm drawing out, in summary, is that the Knights Templar were created by Rome as a military power and given great power. Eventually, their power grew too great, and they were expelled from Rome and driven into exile, where they landed in Scotland, and over the centuries grew into Freemasonry and secret societies, while also being intertwined in England and the Church of England. By the time of the Reformation and the power of the Church of England grew, they were intertwined in Christendom, unaware to the masses, and were the second leg to the power that would lead to the New World agenda we are currently at today. The reason we started here first before we jumped into the history of the Protestants, we need to understand the hidden power that was in place before all of this was established. When we think of the Protestant movement, we only see Luther and Rome. But 200 years before this movement, there was a great shift in power that went into hiding that cannot be ignored. When we actually review this information in history, what we see with the Templars and the Roman Church was the break between white magic and black magic. The Church being white magic and the Templars being the black magic. They all had the same goals and worked under the same authority, but the white magic did not approve of the black magic's methods. So the black magic went underground and formed secret societies. They hid from the church. And if I did not give you this foundation of the Templars, the information following them would be incomplete. These videos are being made to inform you. I want you informed and knowledgeable so that we weaken the hold of the enemy, because he wants you blind, ignorant, and stupid. The ignorant will tell you that there's no reason to know this information. But this is precisely why so many people make false conclusions and do not understand that the world they live in. If you really want to understand the world, you must have knowledge. What you do with it after that, that's your choice. But it's not good to just be ignorant to so many things that people are controlled by today. Their power and their influence still exists today. This is a very big part of the world that we live in. So many things are touched by this. And so if you ignore their place in history, you ignore how many people have been steering you and why they've been steering you. But again, we're not going to go too far too fast. The other major part of the Templars has to do with the Holy Grail, like I mentioned earlier. But I don't think I want to go there with you again at this time yet. Freemasonry needs to be further understood as well. But I can't go into all that without understanding the Templars. They are the basis of understanding the start of the secret societies. And if you want to understand where this world is heading, understanding the secret societies will assist you greatly. Through the Bible, we know where the world is heading. We understand the conflict. We understand the phases and the trumpets and the bold judgments that will be poured out. We understand the ending with the millennial kingdom. But one thing we do not understand is the enemy side of the story. He has a side. And he's beginning to tell his side in a very false way to make him seem as if he's a victim. And if you understand history, you can understand where these things are coming from, why they're coming, and you can help yourself and your family not fall for the lies. If we never look to what they have done throughout history, in the darkness, we will be overtaken like many of us have been since birth. We are told in scripture, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. That's Ephesians chapter 5, verse 11. These people, these secret societies, they have established great systems of communication and infrastructure, massive economic and political orders, religious structures that dominate the world. And without much of an understanding of the past, much of this history can go by the majority of us. People that make conclusions about what's going on in this world and do not include the Templars and Freemasonry into their understandings, they do not have the complete picture. They're not telling the full story. The thing is that they write about these things. They don't completely hide their secrets. They just place them in books and then deter us from reading. People know more about what's going on with the trades in the NBA and what's going on with the Super Bowl more than they actually know about history that controls their life. Why do you think the saying is that if you want to tell a secret, put it in a book? Actually, the saying is a little bit more deeper than that. They actually are speaking about Negroes, but that's the saying. If you want to tell a secret, put it in a book. I'm not divulging some great information that the masses have not told. I'm not a whistleblower. I've just been a student for many years, reading many books, trying to understand this world. And I am now trying to teach all these things that I have read and learned so that others have a strong view of the real world and not the fake one that we have been led to believe in. All the roots of the secret societies, they start here when they came out into the public and began recruiting with the Templars. All the infrastructure of the secret societies, the wealth, the occult powers, they can all be traced back to the Templars. And the thing is that many of us probably never even heard of them, or if we have heard of them, we know very little about them, or stuff that they talk about on the History Channel, stuff like that. What we heard is not more than their names. But the thing is that we are entering their world that they have been creating in the dark. We cannot change it, But knowledge and understanding will keep our hearts and minds protected from their lies and their schemes. Remember, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of Yahuah, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the shaft which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahuah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. That's Psalm chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. You must understand, conspiracies, they are not anything new to the people of Yasharel. Why do the nations rage, and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahuah and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cord from us. He who sits in the heavens shall laugh. Yahuah shall hold them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his wrath and distress them in his deep pleasure. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. Yahuah has said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession. You shall break them with the rod of iron. You shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. That's Psalms chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. And for those of us who live in Yah's truth and await his kingdom, we know these people conspire and they plot against us. But we also know that judgment awaits them. As we live in knowledge, it allows us to walk in more wisdom and not be taken advantage by the schemes and plots by the enemy. This was one area that needed to be dealt with, and now it has been. Knowledge is power, and I hope that from this part in this discussion, many people have been given more power. Do not be deceived by our enemy any longer. You must wake up, and you must be set free. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like this and share this video with others. If you have not done so already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. I really would like to thank everyone for all their support through this time, and I appreciate the prayers and support. All the messages of love and understanding were overwhelming, and they truly blessed me. Thank you. As always, I want to thank all those who donate to this ministry. Your donations are a sincere blessing to this ministry, and I'm extremely appreciative for your love, offerings, prayers, and support. Thank you. Be blessed. Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. I love you all.